Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Po, and today I'm going to be doing some recommendations and my TBR for my February monthly priority, which is Black History Month. If you're not familiar with my monthly priorities, I'll link a video about them below as well as a playlist of the past ones that I've done. But basically in February, I'm going to be focusing on reading a lot of Black authors. This is not the only thing that I'm going to be reading, but I'm definitely going to be prioritizing these books in my TBR. So today I'm going to give you some recommendations for books by Black authors that I've read in the past year and loved, and then talk about my TBR for this coming month. So first, let's do recommendations, beginning with Ring Shout by P. Djèlí Clark. This is a historical dark fantasy / horror, which is set in the 1920s in Georgia and follows a group of Black women who have the ability to see monsters. And these monsters, called Ku Kluxes, inhabit members of the KKK and are intent on some pretty bad things. So these women have to fight against them with magical swords and all sorts of things. There's interdimensional beings, all sorts of really cool SFF, a bit of action, a bit of horror, a little bit of body horror even. It is full also of really interesting history, so much commentary on the way that Black people lived their lives in the South in the 1920s and the broader historical context of that. This is such an excellent book. It's also got great dialect, the way that it's written, the way that the characters speak. It's so good, so gripping. I do have a standalone review for that, so I will link it below, and I definitely recommend this one. Next is Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is a YA novel told in verse about two half-sisters who discover that they're related after a tragedy where their father dies in a plane crash, and they have to deal with processing the grief of losing their father while also handling the anger of learning that he had this other family. One of the girls is in New York, the other is in the Dominican Republic, and they have to kind of navigate the relationship that they build with each other after this as well. I love Acevedo's writing so much. I found not just the poetry, the verse in this to be so beautiful, but the emotional impact of this story was huge on me. I loved the way that it explored grief, the way that it explored anger, the way that it explored sisters and aunts and mothers. There was so much complexity in those emotional relationships, and I got such a ton out of this story. I do have a standalone review for this one as well, so I'll link that below. And lastly, I'd like to recommend Take a Hint, Dani Brown by Talia Hibbert, which is a contemporary romance featuring two people. Dani, who is about to get her PhD. She's very focused on her professional future and everything she wants to get done, does not have time to waste on relationships, but she does kind of want a sex buddy, and so she prays to the Orishas asking for them to send her one. And then we have Zaf, who is a security guard, although also an ex-rugby player, that works in the same building as Dani. And during a fire drill one day, he ends up carrying her out of the building. People snap pictures, it looks so romantic, and they decide to capitalize on that brief internet fame to boost his profile because he runs a non-profit rugby kids organization. So this story is so amazing. Talia Hibbert is just such an excellent romance writer. She has so much humor, she has such great banter between the characters, and she delves into a lot of really interesting topics. I especially liked Zaf in this. Zafir is just this sweet cinnamon roll of a guy. He loves reading romance novels. He's so romantic, but he also deals with a ton of anxiety, and there's a lot in this about him dealing with those anxiety attacks. And I just really loved the characters. I related so much to them. I found it so sweet. I do have a standalone review for this as well, so I will also link that down below. Now moving on to my TBR. So my TBR for this month, I have 7 books, and these are just ones that I kind of want to prioritize, but I probably won't read all of them. Maybe if I read 5 of them, that'll be great, but I'll probably pick up other books by Black authors in February that aren't on this list, and I'll pick up plenty of other things that don't even fit within my priority as well. So this is more just to get me to prioritize putting holds on them and try to get to them. Also, I wanted to mention that the BLACKATHON is also running this month, so if you're interested in checking out a readathon that focuses on that, I will link the information below. I didn't find out about the prompts early enough to create my TBR based on them, and I couldn't kind of retrofit, but they've got some really great ways that they have split it up by genre, all sorts of cool things, so definitely check that out. So the first book on my TBR is Heads of the Colored People by Nafissa Thompson-Spires, which is a collection of short literary fiction stories that really focus on, being Black in the US. And I've heard that this is really a great collection. It focuses on a lot of interesting issues, and it's very dark and humorous. So I'm very excited about this, and I'm going to be buddy reading this with Judy Brown, who is a commenter that I am so excited to read these stories with because I think there's going to be a ton to discuss. Next is Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Dennis-Benn. This is a book that I heard about from Saajid at Books Are My Social Life, who I will link below, and it sounds really fascinating. It's a contemporary literary fiction about a queer Jamaican woman who is really struggling to make ends meet. She has to do sex work, things like that, in order to provide for her younger sister. And there is a hotel that is going to be built in her town, which might ruin the identity of the town, but also might offer some economic benefits for her. So this sounds like it's going to be a really complicated book that is going to really be such a fascinating read, and I'm very excited because I'm going to be reading this as a buddy read with Madelyn at MadeWithBooks, who I will link below. And Madelyn is so great with literary fiction. She reads a ton of that. She's involved in the literary world, so I know I'm going to get a lot out of this book by buddy reading it with her. Next is The Dark Fantastic by Ebony Elizabeth Thomas. This is a nonfiction book that I heard about from Adri at Perpetual Pages and Njeri at ONYX Pages, both of whom I will link below, and they said great things about it. It is basically essays about the role that Black girls play in middle grade and YA fantasy, and sort of taking a critical lens to look at that portrayal and what that's saying and what really it should be saying instead. I'm going to be buddy reading this with Reija at the book Finch, who I will link below, and I know that is going to be an excellent read because Reija is very, very tuned into social justice issues and just really good at analyzing things. We've buddy read a number of nonfiction social justice books before, and it's always an amazing experience to buddy read with them, so I'm very excited. Next is another nonfiction, The Pretty One by Kia Brown. This is a collection of essays by a Black disabled woman talking about really her experiences and her view of a lot of things in pop culture and media. I love these kinds of essay collections that discuss really what's going on in society and taking a critical lens to it. I've seen a number of people talk about this book, but in particular recently Jen at Remembered Reads, who I will link below, had recommended this as kind of a good nonfiction memoir. Next is Real Life by Brandon Taylor, which is a contemporary literary fiction that I heard about from Russell at Ink and Paper Blog, who I will link below. And he said that this is one of his favorite books of 2020. Since I heard him talk about it, I have just really wanted to read it. It takes place in the Midwest and follows a queer Black man who is just dealing with working on his PhD and kind of struggling to fit in. And it just sounds, based on everything that Russell has said, like it's going to be such a good read. Next is Riot Baby by Tochi Onyebuchi. This is an SFF novella set in the contemporary world, but with a pair of siblings where the sister has some supernatural powers and kind of has to decide how to use them when her brother is unjustly arrested for a crime that he did not commit. And this is really looking at, I think, especially the social injustices of being Black in the US and kind of how to handle that. So I'm very excited about this one. And last on my TBR is Black Girl Unlimited by Echo Brown. I have heard amazing things about this from Muddy at mynameismarines, who I will link below. And it just sounds so good. It is a YA contemporary fabulous story about a girl who is a wizard. And this is something where there's a lot of heavy topics, a lot of issues of pain and trauma that are addressed with sort of magic overlaid as both a symbolic and a real thing. And it just sounds like it's going to be such a powerful read. Okay, so those are my recommendations and my TBR for February. If you guys have read any of these books, if you have any thoughts, any ideas, anything like that, or if you're going to be focusing on Black authors or participating in the Blackathon or anything else like that, I'd love to hear from you. Just leave me a comment down below.